Hi and welcome to Enterprise Architecture Security, EAS framework and the SDM. What we'll talk about today is what EAS is and what the goals for EAS are, why EAS matters, and how SDM, which is an acronym for Security Development Method, relates to the EAS. How EAS and SDM both support EA audit and different levels of architecture documentation that exist. So what is EAS? EAS stands for Enterprise Architecture Security, and it is a framework that is aimed to obtain highly structured enterprise architecture documentation. And EAS also builds security into the absolute fabric of enterprise architecture work. EAS also forces organizations to document in one and only one way. EAS also enables true analyzability by its structured way of documentation. And it is based on a highly detailed meta model, which we will come to later on. EAS is supported by a process called SDM, which is short for Security Development Method. So a number of acronyms and common terms that we use in this presentation. EA stands for Enterprise Architecture. EAS is short for Enterprise Architecture Security. SDM is short for Security Development Method. Spark's EA is an architecture tool that is used for the EAS. And a technology is an adaptation for Spark's EA that we use. So what are the goals for EAS and SDM? I would say that EAS aims to take organizations to a more secure level by documenting it holistically. And we also need to look at all the layers of an organization in order to secure it fully, because no organization is more secure than its weakest chain. I.e., we cannot only look at IT, we must look at all layers such as physical structure and entering buildings, etc. So EAS is built in a holistic way, looking at the whole organization or enterprise. So when we look at EAS and the method SDM, it provides security in two dimensions. One dimension is to create an EA documentation that you can trust and analyze. And the second dimension is that the SDM primarily involves all needed security roles in order to communicate, discuss, and never forget things. So if you look at the SDM, which is the method or the process to develop EAS models, it helps you by doing things in the right order. It helps you to not forget things. And it also gives you tips and analysis, things like reports that you can use in the framework in order to follow up and analyze your highly structured enterprise architecture model. So what about me? My name is Thomas Geke, and I have worked with architecture at different levels for more than 30 years. I have worked in large organizations and guided many different architects to document in a structured way, both in enterprise models and at lower levels. I worked closely with security personnel, and I've analyzed large enterprise architecture models. And I also know what big large enterprise models can give you if they are highly structured. And I have also created a lot of meta models for these organizations in order to give this structure to the enterprise architecture work. In my opinion, there are 3 levels of architecture documentation. You have the drawing or image level, where you place things in just a 2-dimensional area to discuss things that you need to talk about and understand. It could be a whiteboard, it could be PowerPoint, or it could be something else. And the level 2 architecture documentation is by using an architecture tool. And that is you are creating basically a database with architecture information where you can reuse these architectural elements and place them together and relate them over time. But it may not be so structured. But in the level 3 of architecture documentation, you have an architecture tool that follows strict rules. So what are the different effects of being on these different levels? If you are at level 1, the reuse is more or less nothing. Or maybe you can copy and paste an image of a system or something into the next image, but any renaming will not follow these different images. At level 2, you have a database with an architecture element, and renaming, etc., will affect all the diagrams, but it is not as structured. So you cannot do an analysis or hence deduce things from these models, because different architects will draw these different architecture levels or images differently. At level 3, you have a highly structured way of doing things. All architects document the architecture the same way. So we can actually do large-scale analysis from this model because we can trust that all the architecture is documented in the same way. And the level 3 is the level that I would like to be on, and that is what EAS relies on. So why does it matter? Why is it important to have highly structured architecture documentation? Well, as I said before, you need to have a highly structured architecture documentation in order to be able to analyze it. If it's unstructured, there's no way to deduce anything. If you want to deduce things, you need to have a highly structured model where all the architects have done architecture documentation the same way. And you can also use these highly structured architecture documentation by proving things. And you can also gain positive things like big data similar effects, like finding things that you didn't know from the beginning that you needed, but since you know how the architecture is documented, you can trust it, and you can deduce things that you didn't think of at the first time. And that is what I call the big data similar analysis, where you find things to analyze after the first initial architecture is drawn. So one of the features of EAS is the cross-checking functionality. So this framework aims to streamline your architecture documentation so that all architects do the same way. And how do you do that? One thing is by building rules into the fabric of EAS, but also doing cross-checking. So you have a lot of queries that you can ask the model, am I on the right path, or is this something I need to adjust? So this is a feature built into the framework. So the goal is to have zero errors by the cross-checking functionality. Once you have that, you have reached the level of predictability in your architectural model. So what is the foundation for these cross-checkings? Well, it's a highly structured meta model. And this meta model for the EAS comes in two flavors. One is the human readable version, and one is the physical, which is a technology for SPOX EA, where you have the tools and diagrams and symbols that you need to model. So you can read about it, and you can get helped by the tools and diagrams, and you can also do the cross-checking functionality with the aim that getting no responses of errors in your prediction model. So this is an example how the EAS meta model in the logical or human readable format is. You can read about all the stereotypes or the types of elements that you can draw. This is the example of a capability. You have the description of what it is. You have comments, you have metadata like tags, and you have comments like naming and some examples. So this is for all of the element types that is supported by EAS. You have this kind of documentation. Once you have reached the principle or the level of documentation quality that EAS offers, you are actually able to do EA audits and due diligences at a level that is needed for decision making, because you know that the architecture documentation is at such a level that you can deduce things and analyze it, both from a quality perspective and the decision-making process, but also from a security point of view. If we look at the different levels or the body structure of EAS, you can say that it is built out of three parts or two parts, depending on how you view it. But you have the head, which is the strategy and motivation layer, which is the purple layer on top. This is where your problems, goals, and capabilities reside. This is also where you create or document the requirements that will influence all the rest of your body of the organization. So we have everything below the strategy layer, i.e. the orange, yellow, white, cyan, green, and red layers here. They are regarded as the body. So the head or the strategy and motivation layer influences via requirements the different resources in the body. And we also talk about the heart section, which is the information architecture, which is the white section. So basic principles are that the head drives change and the body responds to this change. And we have two different kinds of tracing. We have the influence relationship going from the head to the body, and you have responses from resources in the body to capabilities, things that we need to be good at. So this is the basic principles of the EAS framework. So I hope that we have reached and that you understand these things of the EAS. The next session will be about the STM, the method or process that applies EAS to different levels of evolving or development of the EAS.